This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so
Okay, cool. Yeah, please dive in.
we had a good meeting at the OCP summit about, what was that, a month ago now. And from a whiteboard, Isaac Oram from Intel distilled the discussions down to a pretty nice short email. And we have essentially defined about it, let's just call it 2-year process, although as of today, it's probably a 23-month process for getting ready to being able to have a certain badging requirement for OCP, meaning that an OCP system to get the badge has to support open systems firmware. And we've defined a couple intermediate steps. I think the most important intermediate step a year from now is we've defined a thing called OSF ready, open systems firmware ready. And what OSF ready means is that while a given ODM may not provide OSF, they will provide hardware that is capable of having OSF installed. And that means all the issues around licensing of blobs and locking down of hardware and all that are resolved to the point that you can install OSF. And I've had a recent very important experience with how important that's going to be. We were working with the Dell node, and we found out that that thing was locked down very, very tight. It was a new recent Dell node, and we did not have the ability to install OSF on that Dell node. So, where I think the contrast pointed out by Lenovo is you can purchase a Lenovo node today that doesn't have that kind of lockdown on a server node. So for OSF ready to work, every body who's selling systems that claim to be OCP systems has got to be OSF ready, meaning that a third party or a customer can install their implementation of OSF. So, and the way Isaac formulated this goal, OSF ready, the goal is ensure a path for system owner to execute OSF firmware. That means the system has a path to avoid, disable, bypass security features that prevent end users from making changes. This includes root of trust for authentication, that sort of thing. And another piece here is that binaries are licensed without redistribution issues. So within the last year, Intel has changed the licensing on FSP blobs so that there are no redistribution issues. They're redistributable in the same way microcode has been for about 15 years. So the next big benchmark is September of 2019 at the Open Source Firmware Conference. We will have identified all the binaries that need license changes, and the silicon vendors will commit binaries which will allow independent BIOS vendor or OEM or ODM license updates. So in other words, we're going to resolve the, to give two examples, the ME blob licensing is going to get changed to be more like microcode licensing and redistribution rights, as well as the ACM blobs. So that's a commitment we've got from Intel, and we're working on getting that commitment from other vendors for equivalent binaries. And at September 2019, the OEMs and ODMs will start planning licensing and SKU changes needed. Again, that's kind of where Lenovo has shown a path there. We're hoping to get other vendors to follow. And that will include working with suppliers on licensing. So that's the September 2019 event. Then by March of 2020 at the Open Compute Summit, Open Systems Firmware is going to announce the logo requirements and measurement procedure for OSF ready systems. And we will have logo marketing material for independent BIOS vendors, OEMs, and ODMs. By March 2020, we actually don't expect the silicon vendors to have any additional work. Now, that's aspirational. We would like to have this figured out by September 2019, but March 2020, the feeling is there won't be anything left to do to be marked as OSF ready. And the OEMs and ODMs will commit to having an OSF ready SKU. September 2020, at the Open Source Firmware Conference, there's no additional work for OSF Open Systems Firmware contributors. There's no additional work for silicon vendors. The OEMs and ODMs will have OSF ready SKU demonstrations. And then finally, by March 2021, we're going to lock down. If you want to have an OCP logo, you've got to actually have this provided. It won't be an optional thing. So March 2020, we want to have OSF ready as something you can provide optionally. And in March 2021, we want to basically say you have to do it. We did determine in discussions with Intel and the other ODMs that this was an achievable schedule. March 2020 for locking down would be too soon, but March 2021 is totally doable. So that's kind of my summary of the note and discussions with Isaac and the others at the OCP.
Yeah. So one question there, like the September conversation, right? Like, are we using, like you said, Intel, they're providing the binaries and are committed to provide binaries. Is it in the context of Cascade Lake or Skylake? Which Olympus SKU are we talking about?
I believe that the current discussion is around Cooper Lake and Ice Lake.
Okay.
And
Cooper Lake.
David probably, yeah, I'm sure the Facebook guys can correct me if I misidentified that.
No.
Yeah. We just want to have a realistic timeline for the silicon vendors.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
and one thing, let's get this clear from the start. We're not going to be looking at older chipsets. That, there was a discussion of, well, can you fix Haswell or whatever? And the feeling here is this is a going forward activity, not a, historical thing.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, though, I mean, if the lead up work that we got to do, like proof of concept or something, are we doing it on? I mean, why? I mean, while the silicon is evolving, and if you are also trying to come up with this new paradigm, sometimes it might hinder things. So to prove that this concept is going to be viable, are you like doing some proof of should we do some proof of concepts and Cascade Lake generation, or it doesn't really matter for us?
I think the proof of and again, Facebook is way more active in this than Google. They're the ones to really say this, but I believe the proof of concept is going to be Cooper Lake, right, David?
Yeah, I think so. As far as the forward-looking platforms go for now. However, we have been doing a decent amount of work on the Broadwell DE platforms and Skylake SP purely.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the vendor's on the call, but he can talk a lot more about what's been done for Microsoft's side on the purely platform, Mount Olympus, of course.
Yeah. Microsoft side, it would be me because I lead the UEFI team. So we are doing Skylake and Cascade Lake work right now. That said, I just wanted to ensure that we are all aligned on any lead of work that we have to do on the choice of CRB. But I think that's good. I think September goals are good.
Okay, yeah, and let's see. So Molly, you recently, I guess you're kind of taking the vendor's place on the OSF side of things, as I recall from a couple weeks ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. If there's anything you'd like to, as far as getting up to speed with what Google and Facebook have been doing, maybe we can set up another chat sometime. But yeah, definitely we're working on proof of concepts. We've been working hard to get all of the tooling and things that we need in place, at least from our side. So yeah, we don't just want to dump this all at one time, of course.
Yes. Yeah, I think when we go into the September conversation, right? What we can say, on whichever vehicle, this is how it's going to pan out. I mean, and I think Intel can provide test binaries for that generation, uh, and then Cooper Lake is anyway, we're all in the middle of that, right? So that wave of development is going to kick off soon, right? So.
Yep. Yeah, and I think so. Cooper Lake seems to be the platform that most of us are targeting, at least for initial, real proof of concept. And then the generation after that is when we're going to say, okay, we have our working proof of concept with the Cooper Lake platform, whether it's OCP or Mount Olympus or whatever. We're all able to run an OSF stack in one form or another, whether it's Linux, OpenUSD. And so now we're going to expect that the generation after Cooper Lake is when we're really going to say, this is our hardware requirement. It's ready to go.
Yeah, and another thing is for the compliance, right? Like, I mean, at least on the Windows side, we have this vehicle or whatever. So do we have that OSF compliance kit or something that we need to also arm it, in tandem? That way, hey, these are the checks that we do to prove that it is OSF logo certified. Is that
Yeah,
something that?
yeah, I think that's a great idea. Because to be honest, I think a lot of us have kind of been learning the requirements as we go along.
Yeah.
But if you have some formal requirements for the Windows side of things, then it would certainly be a good thing to introduce so that development can get going on in that pipeline. And I know being able to boot Windows from Linux boot has been a topic that has come up once in a while. And I think while we don't have that ability today, it's certainly something we would like to implement.
Sure.
Yeah, from our end, the thing that I worked on was getting chipsec working. Jean-Marie has also done that, and the interesting thing we found with the Winterfell is that the Linux boot was a bit more correct in a chipsec sense than just the plain UEFI. But we also learned the hard way that certain settings of like PCIe bifurcation was wrong. And we kind of need tools to measure performance of PCIe and make sure we're not leaving anything on the table. So chipsec's not nearly enough, but it's not a bad start.
Okay. Yeah, I think let's see. There is yeah. I mean, on standards compliance, like and then even the chipsec and security, and yeah, I think we need to come up with like a set of tools that kind of go with the the OSF ambitions, because that way it will be complete, and let's see if we pencil down the thoughts and then figure out which needs to be prioritized, and then who can all contribute to this.
So a practical question: would a GitHub organization or repo make sense, and if so, where? Anyone have any thoughts on that, so we can share the compliance tests that we put together, or the scripts to run them, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think we already have the OCP GitHub repo, the OSF GitHub repo, and this would actually be a really good place for that, I think.
Okay. So we'll try and get that ready in the next 2 weeks before the next meeting and announce it then.
Yes. Let's do that then.
Yeah, it's a really good, important point. So I was just curious. I'm really happy that we've got people here from WeWent on, and I was wondering if they had any thoughts on what they've heard so far. Or not.
Yeah, I more curious. WeWent team, are you on the state side? Are you based off of Bay Area? Are you based off of where?
Hi, this is Johnny. We are based from Asia, Taiwan.
Taiwan. Okay. So
And I'm Don Cook. I'm just new to this, coming up to speed. I'm based out of the Redmond office.
oh, okay.
Good.
Yeah, good to see the Taiwan team able to make it to this call. I really appreciate. Yeah, at the same time, Don. I mean, we are in Redmond too. We should catch up sometime, definitely. And really want to know your views on the OSF and in terms of jump starting OSF. What kind of help you would need, and what kind of efforts are you putting so far? If you have anything,
Well, again, as I said, I'm new. I just started recently, and I'm coming up to speed on everything right now.
Okay, so let's catch up in Redmond, and then probably next meeting or so, or maybe I mean, if you have any opens, you can bring it to this forum. That way.
Yeah. Okay.
This is
Yeah, I
very
would.
clear. Yeah.
I would like to remind, it'd be very nice to see any or all, both of you from WeWin at the Open Source Firmware Conference, which is in, where is it? In Sunnyvale or Mountain View in September. I've actually forgotten where we're holding it. And there also is a, you know if there's any slots open at the Firmware Hacking Conference in June, David? I don't remember. Is that pretty much closed at this point?
We're pretty full.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A few people join, but it's nearly full. So feel free to try. Maybe some tickets are left, but basically it's a hackathon for 1 week working on open source firmware related things. So yeah.
Yeah. So from WeWin or Quanta or Lenovo or whoever wants to come hang out in Germany and talk OSF and drink beer.
Yeah.
The tickets are free.
Yeah.
I'd be delighted to have you there. So all this stuff is open, and we're always happy to see you. And further, probably more convenient for Donald, but applies to Johnny too. We kind of have a deal we do here at Google. I don't know about probably Facebook could do a similar thing, but we've had a lot of vendors come in for a week and sit down and work with us on hardware. So when we try and walk them through, how you set this stuff up, and it generally doesn't take a week. In fact, we just had another company take an afternoon and get the Linux boot part of this working. So you're always welcome to come down and just see what this is all about. Anytime.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and thanks for the invitation.
So one last thing. This conference is as booked as an hour. We don't require that it run for an hour. So I'm kind of done whatever I thought I wanted to get done. So again, I'm going to be quiet now for a while and see what else needs to be discussed.
Yeah, so only one thing is for the following session, I think the first week of May, do you have agenda identified, and when will the topic of ARM boot flows will be on the agenda? You said May 16th?
May 16th.
Okay, so first week of May, you said we can talk about the GitHub repo stuff and for the compliance and other vision for the compliance. We can present on that.
Yeah, May 2nd.
Yeah.
All right, I think unless someone has another thing, and we'll give it another little half a minute or a minute or so. We may be done, but let me know if I'm pushing this too fast.
Yeah, I think so.
We're itching to get back to work.
Milestone.
All right, and again, thanks to everyone for showing up, and it's always nice to see Leo in here. Everyone else too, and we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Everyone else has left the call.
Everyone else has left the call. Goodbye.